Hi, I'm Mohsen, and I'm so excited to welcome you to The Seeking Soul. This podcast is a space where we explore topics like philosophy, spirituality, and literature, often from perspectives you may not have encountered before. As someone who grew up traveling, I've had the privilege of witnessing the deep similarities between cultures and people, even when mainstream narratives focus on what divides us. As an Iranian American, I've always felt to share the beauty, wisdom, and lessons from my Eastern heritage with my Western community, and vice versa. My hope is to be a bridge between these two worlds, fostering a sense of oneness and unity. With the help of AI, this dream feels more achievable than ever. Using documents and notes, I've provided with the link of the sources in the description. Along the way, you might encounter ideas that feel new, challenging, or even uncomfortable, and that's okay. That's the purpose of this space, to listen with empathy and approach every perspective with love and curiosity. Welcome to the Seeking Soul.
You know that feeling when you're trying to get your head around something really important, but you're just drowning in information, opinions, articles, just noise everywhere. What you really want are those moments, those aha moments where it suddenly clicks. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here in this deep dive.
Precisely. Yeah, we're diving into ethics today. It's something that, well, it touches pretty much every part of our lives, doesn't it? Our choices, how we see the world, covering everything from quite deep philosophy to, practical advice for a better life.
Right. And the source material, it brings in a lot of different angles, different perspectives. So our mission really is to pull out the actionable stuff, the insights that can genuinely help us all lead lives that feel more, I suppose, complete and definitely more ethical based on what we've explored. So where do we even start with this journey into ethics?
Well, the speaker in our source kicks off with a really potent idea. He basically says that ethics, he calls it akhlaq, which means noble character. That's actually the ultimate goal, the culmination of all the prophet's teachings. He even quotes a saying, something like, "I was sent to perfect noble character."
Wow. That puts it front and center, doesn't it? Ethics isn't just a side dish. It's the main course. It's the point of the spiritual guidance.
Exactly. It frames it as the destination.
So the big takeaway is living ethically isn't just rule following. It's the purpose of the whole journey. Like you said, the destination.
Right. And he goes further, makes it even clearer. Says nothing boosts faith like good character. And the best among people, faith-wise, they're the ones with the best ethics. It really boils things down to what truly matters.
It really does. Makes you rethink faith itself. It's not just belief locked in your head. It's how you act, who you are. Okay, so the discussion then takes this really interesting turn, talking about the fear of death. He suggests that this fear, the fear of just non-existence, is actually something planted in our minds. He even says by the devil, specifically to stop us from feeling joy, from being happy. Okay, let's unpack this a little.
Yeah, it's quite a perspective. What's key here is how the source reframes death. Not as a full stop, like you said, but more like a transition. There's a quote mentioned, "Today you are going to your Lord." It implies, movement. Continuation.
And then there's that image, so vivid, the dream of falling into a well, but then emerging as this radiant youth. It's such a powerful way to visualize that spiritual transformation through death. It makes you see death differently. Less end, more potential rebirth.
Absolutely. Yeah, it captures that idea of renewal, growth.
Yeah.
Moving beyond just loss, which is how we usually frame it.
He also touches on this idea of the pressure of the grave, but crucially, not as some, physical torment by angels, which is a common image. Instead, he explains it as, well, as the consequence of our own actions in life, like the weight of what we did or didn't do. Like if you neglect a friendship, right? That feeling, that weight, it's real, even if no one's actively punishing you. Our bad actions create that inner pressure we face later.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, this view really shifts the focus. It's not external punishment, it's more internal, a reflection of our ethical life.
So it's not about just knowing the right words, reciting phrases to pass some test. It's about the actual state of your heart, your deeds. The speaker uses that phrase, "The grave is a box of deeds." Powerful.
Exactly. What really jumps out is this focus on genuine interchange. Your Lord, he says, isn't just who you say you serve. It's who or what you actually serve through your actions. Like, if all your energy goes into chasing wealth, then, well, that's your real focus, isn't it?
Yeah. And that story about the scholar, the one that angels couldn't quite figure out where to put him because his true devotion was murky, that really hits home. It's the sincerity, the consistency inside that counts.
He really underlines that judgment isn't about labels. It's about the real motivations, the values driving how we act.
He also mentioned that idea, no lineage on the day of judgment, and quotes that verse. As you have come to us individually, alone, it just hammers home that individual accountability. In the end, it's just you and your deeds.
Definitely reinforces that. Your personal ethical growth, your spiritual journey, that's what matters. Can't ride on your family's coattails or anything.
Yeah.
Your actions speak for themselves.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly. The speaker lays out what he calls the 3 essential pieces of news, the big headlines, if you will. 1, God exists. 2, there's a day of judgment. And 3, this principle that the universe responds to us. He uses that metaphor. This world is a mountain and our deeds are a call. The echoes return to us. That's quite something to think about.
It is. It paints this picture of a deeply connected reality where our ethical choices ripple outwards. They have real consequences, seen and unseen. It's a strong motivator for mindfulness in our actions, right?
Definitely. He even tells that story about the Bedouin who asked about good and bad deeds. Just grasping that basic cause and effect made him learned. It's a good reminder. Sometimes the biggest truths are pretty simple.
And then he gives the logic behind it. Basic principle, an effect mirrors its cause. So lies tend to breed negativity. Truth tends to bring positive results. It's like the universe reflecting our actions back. Makes sense.
And this point really stood out for me. He mentions a Quranic verse saying, people who believe in God the last day and do good deeds, they get their reward. Regardless of their specific religious label, it points to something universal about ethics.
Precisely. Yet suggests these core ethical values transcend religious boundaries. It's sincerity and good actions that really count in the divine perspective.
Okay, so let's talk about worship. The speaker explains prayer as basically a conversation with God, a dialogue. He points out that shift in the prayer itself, right? From talking about God third person to directly addressing God. You alone we worship. This art of turning. It's a lovely way to think about moving from being distracted to being fully present, connecting.
It signifies moving beyond just the ritual motions to something much more personal, intimate.
And I love that quote attributed to Ali, I do not worship a Lord I do not see. It just underlines that need for a deeper felt experience in worship, not just empty forms.
It really challenges that idea of just going through the motions. It calls for conscious, engaged worship where your heart is actually seeking that connection.
He then pictures prayer as a kind of spiritual climb, a mirage, an ascent, something that requires ongoing effort, reflection. Each prayer ideally building on the last, like making progress, step by step.
That view encourages a dynamic relationship with prayer, doesn't it? Not static, always striving to improve, be more mindful.
He gets practical too, acknowledges those distracting thoughts we all have during prayer, stresses how important it is to keep remembering God throughout the day, like building the muscle outside of prayer time makes it stronger during prayer.
That's such a crucial point. If we're trying to be ethical and mindful of God in daily life, our formal worship naturally becomes more focused, more meaningful.
And he even brings in the aesthetics, the harmony of the movements, the sound of the recitation, seeing prayer as potentially beautiful artistically.
Yes, this holistic view, it's not just spiritual or intellectual, but aesthetic too, recognizing the beauty in the practice itself.
So moving to practical steps, how do we actually improve ethically? The speaker suggests this period of self-reflection, ideally 40 days, reviewing your actions each night. Sounds intense, but you can see how that could really create change.
Oh, definitely. Self-reflection is such a powerful engine for ethical growth. Regularly checking in on our actions, our intentions, it builds self-awareness, shows us where we need work.
And then there's the film test. Love this. Would you be okay if your daily interactions were filmed and shown publicly? It's so direct, cuts through self-deception, makes you really think about how you treat people.
It forces you to face the reality of your words, your actions. Stark, maybe, but effective for gauging ethical conduct.
He also defines taqwa in this context, living so you wouldn't be ashamed if your actions came to light. It's about inner integrity driving outward behavior, living as if it's all being recorded and you're okay with the replay.
Exactly. Taqwa becomes this guiding principle, constantly reminding us of accountability, encouraging us to live by our deepest values.
And the speaker's really encouraging here, points out self-improvement is possible anytime, any age, always chances to correct course.
That message of hope, of continuous growth is vital. Ethical development is lifelong, always opportunities to learn and get better.
He stresses seeking guidance too, both internally from our conscience, our fitriat, he calls it, and externally from prophets, wise people, like having two mirrors reflecting truth back at us.
Yeah, our inner moral compass, the fitriat, and then the wisdom of others to help navigate those tricky ethical waters.
And he encourages engaging with the Quran daily, gradually, reflecting on it, connecting its wisdom to what we find in poets like Saadi, Rumi, Hafiz, seeing that common thread of human conscience, of ethics.
Absolutely. Recognizing those shared principles across different traditions can really deepen our understanding.
This leads nicely into the meaning of Bismillah, that phrase we say at the start of things. He frames it as the crucial first step to move beyond the ego, the pharaonic self, he calls it, and connect with divine qualities. It's about humility, acknowledging something bigger.
It is. And the idea that the ego is often the root of unethical behavior is fascinating. Starting with Bismillah, in the name of God, acknowledges our reliance on the divine, aims to align our actions with higher principles.
Yeah, and he draws that distinction, reputation versus character, what people think versus what God and the angels know. A powerful reminder of where the real focus should be.
True character is that internal integrity, isn't it? Regardless of external appearances.
And this idea that genuine friendship, real connection, comes from sharing that ultimate goal-seeking God. It kind of reframes relationships around shared values, shared striving.
It elevates them, definitely. Beyond surface stuff to a shared spiritual journey. Deeper support, deeper understanding.
Now, this is a big one. Balancing dunya, the world, and deen, religion. The speaker clarifies something crucial. Dunya, in the negative sense, isn't the world itself, work, family, enjoyment. It's heedlessness, forgetting God.
Absolutely. That's such an important distinction. It's not about rejecting the world, but our attitude within it. Work, family, enjoying life. These can all be forms of worship if done with good intention, keeping ethics in mind.
Right, and that quote he shares, if you can buy religion with the world, do so. Do not listen to the dib tempter. Using worldly resources for spiritual aims. The world is a tool.
Exactly.
He explains the world becomes like a mirage only when it's our sole focus, when we lose sight of the eternal. It's all about perspective priorities.
Yeah, when the temporary stuff becomes the be-all and end-all, we lose the bigger picture.
And this concept of rooting out the world by using its resources for spiritual goals, transforming the mundane through intention.
Right. Dedicating worldly actions to higher purposes give them spiritual weight, turns potential distractions into means of growth.
That analogy of the traveler going to the destination, God, gives meaning to all the stops along the way, keeping the goal in sight.
Yeah, our ultimate spiritual destination provides the context, the meaning for everything we do here, turns it into a journey.
He stresses attachments aren't inherently bad as long as God isn't forgotten. It's the forgetting that makes even worship hollow. Mindfulness is key.
Constant awareness of the divine presence keeps our engagement with the world, even our worship, genuine, prevents empty routine.
And he encourages exploring worldly knowledge, science, but with a divine intention, seeing all knowledge as potentially leading back to the Creator.
Seeking knowledge sincerely, to understand the world and our place, can ultimately deepen our appreciation for divine wisdom and power.
Finally, he mentions that verse about people whose business dealings don't distract them from remembering God, highlighting that true devotion is possible right in the thick of everyday life, weaving faith into everything.
True devotion isn't withdrawal, it's maintaining that connection amidst worldly activities.
Okay, so how do we actively cultivate these divine attributes in ourselves? The speaker talks about embodying generosity by trusting in God's provision, living with faith, an open hand, an open heart.
Generosity flowing from trust, recognizing everything's ultimately from God.
Exactly. And constantly being mindful of God's presence, that awareness itself guides us away from negative behavior. It's a continuous ethical compass.
Awareness of the divine acts as that powerful reminder of accountability, helps steer us right.
And love, highlighted as the most significant connection. He eats lunch, he loves them, and they love him. That's the absolute core of the relationship.
That mutual love is presented as the ultimate bond, the driving force for our spiritual and ethical path.
He talks about God's naz, that blend of subtlety and grandeur, and our need to seek that connection sincerely, approaching with reverence, real longing.
That delicate balance of closeness and transcendence. It requires sincere effort, humility from us.
And this point, God doesn't need to do flashy miracles to convince deniers. The signs are everywhere for those with open eyes, open hearts.
Precisely. The signs are abundant, clear evidence for those willing to see.
Religion, he reminds us, is an invitation from God, open to all, aiming for well-being here and hereafter. It's a holistic path.
Yes, the divine message as a complete guide for human flourishing, covering both worldly life and eternal salvation.
And then the ego, that part of us that knows the truth but chooses to ignore it. We need to overcome that inner resistance. It's a constant battle.
Absolutely. Overcoming the ego's tendency to disregard truth is central to ethical and spiritual growth.
The Quran's purpose, he says, isn't superficial reward seeking. It's guidance for reflection, understanding our responsibilities, engaging with the meaning.
Right. The Quran is a source of deep wisdom, requiring thoughtful reflection and application in life.
He even suggests that practical tip. Pick one verse from each surah, each chapter, to guide your daily life. Experience its blessings that way.
That's a wonderful practical suggestion. Engaging with it like that makes the teachings really personal, impactful in daily choices.
And the blessings inherent in prayer itself, provided we're mindful, it's about the quality of connection, not just ticking a box.
Mindfulness transforms prayer from obligation to a powerful source of spiritual nourishment, inner peace.
He tackles the why pray question too, highlighting benefits like early rising, connecting with God amidst the chaos, structure, focus.
Prayer offers that dedicated space for reflection, gratitude, connection, a sanctuary in a busy world.
And really thinking about the meaning of the words in prayer, understanding what we're actually saying.
Contemplating the meaning definitely deepens the understanding and the whole spiritual experience.
Finally, explaining the path of those you favored. It requires courageous action to receive that favor, and the warning against becoming Oshenshu, those who earn wrath through negative actions. It's about actively choosing the ethical path.
That's a crucial understanding. Our choices, our actions, determine which path we align with.
Okay, so he shares some specific Quranic insights for daily life. Fulfill your covenant with God, he fulfills his with you. That reciprocity.
Yes, that highlights our commitment to the covenant and God's reciprocal promise.
From Al Imran, say, O God, owner of sovereignty, recognizing God's ultimate control gives inner strength.
Acknowledging God's sovereignty builds that foundation of trust, resilience.
A powerful message.
Recognizing women's inherent value, approaching marriage with love, respect, mutual well-being, essential ethics highlighted there. It is powerful.
And then this interesting point from various sources about appreciating, even elevating music as a way to connect with the divine. Remember the covenant. True art rooted in love for God and ethics. That's an interesting take on art's role.
It really elevates art, especially music, doesn't it? As a potential path for spiritual connection, remembrance, but grounding it firmly in ethics, a valuable viewpoint.
And finally, justice and fairness in all dealings. Woe to those who cheat, who give less than due. Fundamental ethical conduct.
Absolutely essential.
Wow.
Justice and fairness in all interactions, non-negotiable.
So wrapping this deep dive up, it's just so clear, isn't it, how deeply ethics and spirituality are woven into everyday life. Not abstract ideas at all. They shape everything, how we face death, how we treat each other, how we do business.
Absolutely. And that journey of self-improvement, seeking divine connection, it's ongoing. It takes real effort, real self-awareness.